cloud, please. There we go. Laura, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hey everybody. How you guys doing? Appreciate everyone. I think I got almost 99% response on the messages I sent you guys last week to see how you're doing, which is awesome. And everyone seemed to be doing at least okay. So that was that was great too. I just wanted to pop in as I have been every couple weeks and remind you that I'm here if you need something or have questions. I will doubly remind you that I am here, but I'm all over the place with all the different things that I do. So if I don't answer you, feel free to harass me and say, "Hey, remember I asked you this question 2 days ago and you didn't answer me yet." That's perfectly valid. And so we have group meetings coming up this Friday and Saturday. It's been a month already. Crazy. So Friday is at 5 p.m. and Saturday is at 11. Now I know some of you, your schedules, if you can't make it to either one, you're welcome to schedule a one-on-one. So don't feel like you're left out or something. I just have limited time to create the group meetings, and these are the evening and the daytime options. So we had really great meetings last time. We talked about imposter syndrome. We talked about how to be organized. We talked about all kinds of things. I still owe Anwar a response to a question that he asked me about staying organized. So we can talk about that. I think that would benefit a lot of you to talk about time management and organization. But I also wanted to pop in and ask, are there any other specific topics that you guys might want to specifically talk about during the group meetings? And that way I might have a minute to prepare something specific to share with you. And if not, that's fine. They're just open meetings and we can talk about whatever's on your mind at the time. But feel free to
Uh,
speak up.
like a paid internships or like entry level position versus a paid internship.
Okay, great. That is a good topic. Anybody else?
For me, I was gonna, what if we don't have questions right now, but if we do, can we Slack them to you so that we can have
Um,
any group discussion?
yep, that would be great. Yeah, and you all are welcome too in the Career Coach channel to drop things in there too that everyone can see also, and then it can be a group chat as well. Totally
Yep,
fine.
sorry to cut you off, just to add to what Deandra mentioned, also entry level positions within the software dev space, just to like how to the to-dos and the don'ts and all of that stuff, just to get a little bit more acclimated in that space would be a very interesting topic for me.
Okay. Sounds great. And in the meantime, also there's, all the career coaching blogs, articles, just posted a new one last month. There's one coming out in another week or two about how to stay motivated and positive when you're really doubting yourself. So if you have time or have questions, there's lots of stuff out there, and you can always do YouTube, try to see what kind of advice. There's a lot of people who've been through boot camps and coding that are out there giving advice. So there's other people out there too who you can learn from and see what their career paths were. So don't hesitate to do that. Or if you see something that you watched or you're like, this is really great, you can share it in the Career Coach channel as well. So I hope I will see most, if not all of you, at either Friday or Saturday. And again, you can come to either one of those, both of those, or neither. If you can't make it, that's totally fine. Any other questions before I leave and
What
let
time
Nick
is it Friday? 5 or 6? I missed
that far?
5. Okay.
Oh, and will it be recorded?
I don't generally record them because I want people to be able to speak freely, and it's not like the class where you're getting instruction. People can be talking about I want people to be comfortable talking about personal topics, so if we get into workforce trauma or something like that, I don't want to be recording.
Okay,
But we can
understand.
always, if you miss something, we can talk about it again later.
Okay.
But that's a good point. I should say that. Always know it's a safe space. And again, if there's something you want to talk about that's not comfortable, we can talk about it one-on-one instead of in group too. So thank you for that question. All right, guys, have an awesome class. And Nate, thanks for letting me drop in. I'll see you guys later.
Cool. Thank you, Laura.
Bye.
Hi. I am your guest instructor for the week. I'm your break from software engineering. We're going to dive into the world of DevOps for this week. I'm going to share a little bit of what I know about DevOps with you. But before we jump into the material, I just want to quickly introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask that we go around and have everyone introduce themselves. So before we get into the introductions, though, a little bit of housekeeping. I don't know what Max uses. I'm assuming that he also uses some esoteric monitor. I also use a wide monitor, and I'm going to screen share with it. We're going to get it dialed in so that this isn't unbearable for you to look at. So this is me just sharing my screen right now. Can everyone see this okay? All right. I can also blow it up slightly, but then it starts to make it a little wonky. So, all right, we're just gonna go with that for now. Okay. So my name is Nathan Evans, and I'm currently a site reliability engineer at Datadog. SREs are just a fancy way of saying DevOps engineers. If you've heard of DevOps before, it kind of is a buzzword. DevOps means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. The new hotness is to not really call people DevOps engineers, but to call them SREs. I see somebody's already joined the slides. Let me go ahead and preempt that and paste the link here. If you'd like to just follow along with the slides, feel free to. They're there in the Zoom chat. But yeah, so anyways, I'm an SRE at Datadog. I've been working in software for about 10 years, and I've been working with Hack Upstate since cohort 2. So everything but the very first cohort I've been teaching for. And then there's my stuff for GitHub and LinkedIn. Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. And Also, I'm the guest instructor that doesn't live in Syracuse. A little bit of background. I worked at Density, if you've ever heard of Density. I worked for them for a couple of years. Density is the folks that are based in Syracuse that put the sensor above the doorways, and the sensor counts people as they come in and out. I worked there for a couple of years and got connected with the local Syracuse community, and that's how I ended up here teaching with all of you. So that's a bunch of stuff about me. Now I'm going to turn it around and get all of you to introduce yourselves. And what I want to know is, this is week 6. Yeah, this is week 6. Tell me what your favorite part about the boot camp is so far, and it could be anything. And I'm going to go in order based on attendees, which reminds me that we need to do attendance at some point. Okay, we're going to just go alphabetically. And I'm going to butcher the name pronunciations, but I'll only butcher it once. So I'm going to pick on Anwar first.
Hi everyone. Sorry for the camera. I'm in a bit of a situation right now. I'm a first-year student at SU studying electrical engineering. I found this program through my sister, and I would say the funnest, the most interesting part, without a doubt, was JavaScript. I'm having a bit of an issue on that, but yeah.
You're in the right place. This is the place to learn
Without a doubt.
the JavaScripts. Excellent. Asma.
Hi everyone, my name is Asma. I would say the most exciting part was the first half of the session. HTML and CSS was definitely fun. Doing the wireframe and creating like a website without actually it working, but just duplicating things was very interesting for me. I'm in the same boat with Anwar. JavaScript, still getting used to it a bit, but looking forward to learning more about it.
Cool. Austin.
Hey, I'm Austin. I'm very green to programming. I'd say my favorite part would be more of like the front end and design stuff to go along with Ozma.
Nice. Very cool. Cornelius.
Hello, I'm Cornelius. So far in this cohort, I like using JavaScript to connect with HTML and CSS in a way. I have some familiar background with it during my college time, but having that challenge come back is definitely something I look forward to.
Awesome. Deandra. Deandra.
You was right the first time. It's
Oh, okay.
Deandra. My favorite part of, well, I'm also new to coding. I have zero experience. But my favorite part of the program so far is like making things work. So like the design part is interesting, but I like when I can click a link on the web page and it directs you to somewhere else, or I could click a button and something else populates. I think that's cool. I like dynamic stuff.
Nice. Sounds like programming is the right thing for you. Okay, Desiree.
Hi, I'm Desiree. Probably my favorite part is going back and looking at the code and still being able to remember what everything means and what it all does.
I mean, that's crucial. Excellent. Uh, a beer?
Ebere, um, Ebere Joseph. My favorite part is probably watching the videos. We're watching the videos and just like reviewing what we learned. Because it helps me with like debugging. Because like when I watch the videos and I see how he did it, then I can look at my code and see where I messed up at.
Nice. Harley.
I'm Harley. I am also really brand new to coding and software development. Don't really have a favorite yet. I'm kind of soaking it all in, but I would probably lean more towards the design part because I'm fairly creative. But all of it's brand new to me, so it's all exciting.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Hazad.
Uh, Same as like Harley. I'm very very new to coding. First time ever experiencing something a boot camp like this. Uh, I would say what I'm liking so far is probably I'm not really getting it, but I like the JavaScript. I like the back end work of how these computers interact and all that good stuff.
Excellent. Joe.
Hello, my name is Joe. My favorite part, I guess, about just this field in general is the really deep behind the scenes like computer science aspect of it, that and data structures and not that I'm like particularly good at it, but that's the part that gets me excited.
Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask, what's your favorite data structure?
I don't know. I'm looking. I was watching some guy. He built a whole 16-bit CPU in an Excel sheet without any kind of like he didn't use macros at all. So it was just really cool. I don't know a whole lot about it, but like that whole field is what uh that's like my thing.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Cool. All right. Michael.
Hi, I'm Mike. I am not brand new to coding, but new to this sort of stuff. I have a degree in data science, sorry, master's in data science I got not too long ago. So I've learned some Python and some R, but so I'm learning a whole bunch of new programs, new languages today too. My big thing or my favorite thing so far is the actually linking multiple files together. So whether it's HTML with the CSS to back it up, or going back and diving into HTML with the JavaScript, I'm finding that particularly interesting.
Oh, nice. Nice. R being the one based array language where all the indices start at one.
Yeah.
I don't know anything other than that about R. That's as much as I'm going to pretend to know about
It's really only for
statistics.
stats.
Yeah, statisticians. Except one fun R fact. The package manager, at one point in time, the packages for all of R, all of the libraries that were written for R, was maintained by some professor at a university. And whenever you wanted to publish a new package, instead of pushing it up to Git or whatever, you just emailed the professor your code and he published it to the package registry. Just okay. Michael Mo.
My name is Mo. I work at IT. I did this program last cohort. I had to leave the program for some personal reasons. So I guess my favorite part about it is me being able to do it again. Also because I'm actually trying to actively get a job within my own company right now, doing something around DevOps, more back end development. So
Nice.
this is really helping me further my career. So it's something I've always been wanting to do. I've always been really good at. My mom did HTML, so I knew that from years ago. It's like that and CSS, but I know Linux and I know a little Python. So just broadening my skills, sharpening my skills, getting this chance to do um project based things. So I have a really good basis when I'm actually looking for a job. I like how the teaching is. It helps me out a lot.
Excellent. Safi.
Hi, yes, I'm sorry. My apologies for not being on video, but essentially what I've liked so far is the JavaScript component as well. I know that many have touched on that. I also like essentially learning how to to build the front end development. I do like essentially the aesthetics and the multiple alternatives or opportunities to essentially make a website pop. So that has been interesting, learning essentially the bootstrap, HTML, and CSS.
Excellent. I love hearing people say that JavaScript is their favorite because I mean it's a programming language like HTML and CSS. It's markup, but I love to hear people saying, "Yeah, give me a real programming language. Give me something to sink my teeth into." Okay, Shadia.
Hi, I'm Shadia. I think what I liked most about the program is just being able, when we were for the quiz, we remade, I think, a website and just being able to recreate something and see it like come together. I also like how we have the back channel and we're able to like ask each other questions, and how we're some of us are having a hard time like each other, but you wouldn't know unless we like write in the back channel, if that makes any sense.
And when you say back channel, is that something that I have access to, or is this a super
No, sir,
secret
it's just
students
the
only?
cool kids. Sorry.
Dang. Okay.
No problem.
Let them know.
I'm not going to be thinking about that for the next couple hours. Okay. So Jada, forgive me, I probably butchered that.
Yeah, it's so Jada.
So Jada, got it.
Yeah, so far I was cool in the beginning. JavaScript isn't my favorite, but my background is in for photographic technology, so I have a little bit of background in just HTML just because I created my own website for a class for a credit course. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Terry.
Hey, my name is Wanye, but people call me Terry, because it's much easier, but not getting much like my name like wrong and stuff. I think like my favorite part is JavaScript because like Michael, I'm not really new to coding. I did a little bit of Python then and there, but with JavaScript it seems like similar to like Python a little bit. And
Sure.
also when we have our group studies, that's also like I like that too because we get the pickety each other brains to see like which like problems we did, especially like the other pop quiz we did, like I noticed like some of my other classmates did like a problem differently from me. So it's definitely nice to see another person's point of view how they solve a problem.
Perfect, excellent. I'll just say one thing, I really like to hear that you guys have some groups that are forming, because from previous cohorts that I've seen, the strongest some of the strongest people that I've seen tend to have a support network of other students that they can ask questions and build off each other. Love hearing that. Tiffany.
Hi, my name is Tintin. Actually, you can call me Tiffany. My basis is kind of self-taught, so I'm not really new for the coding. So the favorite part for me for this program is the how teaching me how to like build a website from the beginning, from scratch, because I not really know the part.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you can be an expert data structures programmer and then have absolutely no front end ability like myself, and then never be able to make any nice websites. So yeah, that's a big aspect of this boot camp. Zakim?
Hey, I'm Zakim. I don't really have a particularly favorite part, but I just like to see everything function and run and like fully grasp the understanding for everything. So just seeing everything work properly and just understand the mechanics and syntax and everything.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for introducing yourselves and sharing your favorite part about the boot camp. I've gone ahead and I've shared the slide links. They're in the Zoom chat. I'm going to do it one more time in case anybody doesn't have it already, and then we'll go ahead and get started. But also just feel free to hang out with me in the video. All right, let's jump in. And then before we jump into DevOps, I'm just going to give a quick rundown of what this week is going to look like. So we have 4 days together. The first 3 days are going to be us working through some stuff. And then on the fourth day, we're going to have what's called a deploy-a-thon. That is really where the entire week we're building ourselves up towards deploying a website. So for the first 3 days, we're going to do a bunch of exercises and we're going to work on deploying that website. On the fourth day, I'm going to make sure that every single person in this cohort has a working and deployed website. So that's kind of going to be how we lay out the next 4 days together. There's only one homework for this week. I don't typically go into Canvas and do any of that stuff. The one homework for this week is to have a working website at the end of this week. And like I said, that last day on Thursday, we're going to do nothing but make sure that everybody has a working website. So, all right. Okay, so let's talk about DevOps. But before I give my description of DevOps, in which I've already kind of polluted the word DevOps with it's a buzzword. There's a lot of meaning attached to it, and it's kind of forked into some other names. Like, for example, if you go to Indeed.com right now and search for DevOps jobs, you're not going to see as many as there once were. All of that aside, my own opinion aside, does anybody know what DevOps means? Specifically what it means to them, what they think DevOps is. And feel free, Joe, feel free to just come off mute and yell at me.
I just
Anybody.
realized I've been off mute this whole time. I would say that it is the management and facilitation of the inception and deployment of a software project.
I really like that description. Nice. Anybody else?
For me, I came up with the DevOps is basically the person that creates a digital infrastructure for a certain company or of their own personal use.
Nice. Yeah.
I was gonna
I agree with
say
that as well.
I
Right.
would say DevOps along with creating software infrastructure also has to they're almost like a project management team as well. You have to kind of adjust for the market. You got to go through the flow of how this is going to operate, how to plan, how to deliver this particular product, whatever that may be, whatever parameters it has to be inside of. That's from what I see at work where I currently work at. So DevOps goes much more than software. They're kind of project management about how this software will be implemented through its life cycle and maintaining it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And a lot of what I'm hearing folks say is that it's the management of software, it's the management of infrastructure. There's some project management that goes into it, there's some operational stuff that goes into it, and all of that is accurate. And the truth is, there's not one right way to say it. Similar to how I can't say that software engineering, what all of you are invested in, I can't say that software engineering is one specific thing too, right? Because we all know from what you've learned so far, we all know that there's so many different facets you can specialize in. Like, as people were going around and talking, they're talking about how I really like the front end aspect. I really like the back end data structures aspect. I really like the programming aspect. So it's the same problem with DevOps. There's a million different ways that you can paint it, but there's some common themes like software engineering. There's programming, there's data structures, there's design, there's some common themes, and that's similar to what we've heard so far with DevOps. Now I'm going to give my spin on it. Once upon a time, there were software engineers and there was operations, and operations was kind of like IT. And if you think of a traditional IT department, you kind of think of the folks that maintain the printers, maintain the door badge systems, maintain the Wi-Fi access points, and make sure that the internet's running. Think of kind of physical location also mixed with building automation and IT. Anyways, if I'm building up a picture in your mind, hopefully you're getting you're picking up what I'm trying to describe. So back in the day, there was software engineers and then this old school IT ops group. And what we would see is that software engineers would write code, right? Like all of you are doing. They'd write code, they'd design this amazing website, and then they'd toss it over the wall to IT and they'd say, here, IT, here's my website. Go put it on the internet, right? And there would be this huge pushback from IT or ops saying, okay, what is this thing? Like, is this website for selling t-shirts? Is this website for selling widgets? Like, what is this thing? And so there used to be this siloing of these two departments, software engineers and ops. And that tossing and chucking things over the wall to the ops team to just figure out, okay, how do I take this thing that software engineers are building? How do I take this thing and get it in front of customers? That process would take a really long time because they get chucked something over the wall, and then ops would have to go back and ask a million questions. And then sometimes ops would have constraints like, this application is going to take t-shirt orders, and therefore we need to take credit cards. And that means that we need to structure our code in a certain way, and we need to store credit card numbers in a certain way, or we need to make sure that we don't store certain pieces of information, or that we do store. So all of that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth between these two groups, software engineer and ops, meant that it took a really long time for anything to get done. We would make something, and then it would take many cycles for it to finally get released. Thus was born DevOps. Let's take the two groups and let's smash them together. Let's not have these silos between these two groups anymore. So let's take the software engineers, let's teach them a little bit of ops, and let's take the ops people, teach them a little bit of software. And so the two groups start to merge and become this this functional unit that that can do a bit of both, if that makes sense. Not to say that we can't have folks that specialize in their area of interest, like folks that want to work on infrastructure or capacity or those sorts of things can't, but rather let's try to merge them so there's less of this chucking things over the wall and back and forth. Okay. So a couple of examples, I've already highlighted this, but you think of development, you think of just mainly working on the software, but on the operations side, we're talking about a couple of things that like folks have alluded to, like capacity planning, maintaining network security, but then also how do we get the code in front of customers? How do we actually get our code in front of our users? And that's what we're going to be dealing with. Primarily, we're going to be dealing with this week. I do get to come back and talk to you when you're closer to deploying your capstone. I forget what week it is. I think 20. Anyways, I do get to come back and talk to you a bit more about some of these other topics, which I'm really excited about. But this week, we're going to take a cursory look at deploying the code to the servers. Any questions so far? Done a lot of talking. Okay. So here's why I think you should care about what I'm going to talk about this week. Everybody needs to know a little bit about this. And I'm going to point to a couple of examples real quick. The first one is just a search that I did for software engineers. Here is a software engineer for a company called On Hires. And one of the things that, if you look at this job description, one of the things that they point out is a familiarity with Git. We're going to talk most of this week about Git and GitHub. Has anybody heard of Git or GitHub?
Yes.
A couple people. I see a couple people shaking their head. Okay, great.
Yeah, I heard of GitHub. I mean, I use it.
So this is going to be the interface for how we do our deploys. And spoiler alert, every single software engineer has to work with Git. Gone are the days of taking code and straight deploying to some server. Gone are the days of taking a code and putting it into a zip and using FTP to push it to a server somewhere. Nowadays, everything is done through Git. This is just one of the examples that I cherry picked, but you will see this across pretty much, and I know I'm pointing to a DevOps engineer position here, but this is across the board in the industry. You're going to see lots of people talking about engineers being required to demonstrate some sort of proficiency with Git. And that's really what I'm going to focus on this week. You can kind of ignore some of these other buzzwords about things that you need to know. Some of them are interchangeable, like GitLab, for example. GitLab and GitHub, but we'll get to that in a minute. But regardless, everybody needs to know a little bit about operations, and everybody needs to know a little bit about Git. So we're going to talk about that. But I also want to point out that if you're interested, I know a couple of people are talking about their favorite part of the program and what they are excited about doing after they leave the program. And I just want to say, if you're like me and you like working at startups, I really enjoy working at startups. If you like working at a startup, you need to know a lot about operations because there's not a big operations department necessarily. Some startups have a really nice one, but most of the time, most startups just can't afford to have a great mature operations department. So if you're interested in working at a startup, you will need to know a lot about operations, especially if you're an entrepreneurial type and you want to run your own business. That means you don't have anybody to talk to about DevOps or operations. So you definitely need to be asking questions and paying attention this week. I did put it on here because it's because it kind of goes without saying, but if you go to work at a place like Netflix, Facebook, they have massive operations departments, which means that you need to know next to nothing about operations because they take care of all of that for you. but you still need to know Git because every software engineer still uses Git in terms of pushing their code up to whatever the thing is that that company uses. Okay, so what we're going to cover, first off, we're going to talk about Git in the context of, we're going to talk about DevOps, but primarily Git in the context of using it as a tool to back up and share our code. Then we're going to talk about how we can use Git to deploy our code. And then I'm going to point out some ways that we can troubleshoot, because just like with JavaScript and HTML and CSS, when you run into a problem, it's not always immediately obvious what you need to do in order to solve that issue. JavaScript specifically, when you run into a bug, 9 times out of 10, the first thing that you see in the JavaScript console is not an understandable error right off the bat. So I want to leave you with some tips and some video to be able to troubleshoot, some of these issues when you encounter them. And also, this wouldn't be DevOps week if I didn't do some terminal stuff. And by terminal, I mean the terminal that everyone has installed on their Mac that they can open by just opening up the terminal application. We're going to do some stuff in the terminal because it makes us look cool, but it also makes things go a lot faster. And there's some tools that you can only use if you do it in the terminal. And then you can open your terminal up and have people ask you, is that what those people in NCIS use? You could go, yes. Okay, any questions so far? Otherwise, we're going to jump into Git. Okay. So what is Git? At a high level, Git is a simple tool that, let me back up. Git is a tool that lets us store and back up code. And that's primarily how we're going to use it to start with. Think of it like Dropbox, but for software engineers, or Google Drive for software engineers. It's the way that we store code and are able to look at code and interact with it, as opposed to just text files in Dropbox. So we'll dive into that a little bit later. The other thing that Git is really, really useful for is it's a great way of working on code with other people. And I'll also take a look at that here in a second. And then lastly, Git is a version control system, meaning that every time you push code, Git keeps track of what changes, meaning that at any point in time, you can see the difference between the code that you wrote yesterday and the code that you wrote today. But Git by itself, I'm going to throw a lot of terminology at you this week, so bear with me. There is a terminology guide in the slides somewhere, and if it's not, I'll find it and dig it out. We'll also briefly refresh as we go, but the first piece of terminology is obviously Git. Git is a program. It's not GitHub, and it's not GitLab, and it's not Git Stash or any of the other Git things. Git is a program that was written by Linus Torvalds, the guy that the famous guy that came up with the Linux operating system. Git is a really small program. It's installed by default on your Mac. If you open up a terminal right now and you type in Git, which you can totally do on your Mac, it will print out a bunch of stuff. So everybody has Git installed by default on their computer. Really small program. You don't need to go to the website to download it. It's free everywhere. You can get it. So that's Git, the program. And we talked kind of about what Git represents in terms of technologies, but then there's websites that work with Git. So that's where you hear of things like GitHub, GitLab, Atlassian Bitbucket, Git is another one. But Git is the tool, and then you can think of GitHub as kind of the storage. So you can use Git on your computer without having an internet connection. But as soon as you want to share your code with other people, that's when you would turn to an online service like GitHub or GitLab. So try to, in your mind, keep those two things a little bit separate, because when people talk about Git and when they talk about GitHub, I mean, GitHub is a website and Git is the program that you're using underneath the hood. Okay, let's take a quick look at github.com. We'll go ahead and sign up for accounts. Feel free to do that now if you don't already have a github.com account. Otherwise, I'll give you an opportunity to do that here in a minute. But let's just go ahead and take a real quick look at GitHub. I'm already signed in to GitHub, so it has this fun Facebook style interactive interactive feed for me to see all of my coding friends and what they've been doing on GitHub. But the other thing that you can do with GitHub that I think is pretty neat is you can go and visit projects that you've worked on. So I'm going to go and pick on one of the projects that I've worked on called Librarian. This is a code project. This is called a repo, and it basically is like a folder on your computer. It has a bunch, as you can see up here, it has a bunch of different folders within it, and then it has a bunch of different files alongside of this. So think of this as like a big folder, but pushed up to the internet using Git. So this is a project that I've worked on. Let's go and look at another one. Let's look at Facebook React. So has anybody heard of React? Have you guys been talking about React at all?
I think
Yeah, it's not something we're going to cover later too.
Yeah.
Okay. So React is a library that you're going to cover later, but the source code, the actual underlying software that is built to power React is all here. It's hosted here on GitHub. So here's the code that ends up getting compiled into a JS file that you then import and use for your React projects. Kind of cool. There's 1,600 different people that have contributed. Here's all the different people that have written code and submitted patches to the React project. It's used by 21.6 million people. That's crazy. And then GitHub has the notion of what are called pull requests. We could talk about these a bit later, but I just want to show the idea of this for a second. So Git can be used as a way of pushing your code up and storing it somewhere, but it can also be used to share changes. So I'm going to go and pick on one of these right here. And we're going to take a look at this for a second. So here's what's called a pull request. Someone is trying to make changes to the source code of Facebook React, and they're talking about what it is that they're doing, and they're having a back and forth dialogue with other people on the React project about, well, this person is asking, can you explain about how you would use this mode that you're introducing? So there's the aspect of storing code on Git, but then there's also this very social aspect of discussing your changes, getting feedback. If we go and look at the files that have changed here, people can give you feedback on the code that you're writing. They can suggest changes to your code. There's a lot of really cool stuff. And I know I'm throwing a bunch of stuff at you, but I just want to give you a quick peek at some of the things that you can achieve with Git and GitHub. Any questions about this so far? Okay. So that's a little bit about GitHub. Let's go ahead and get set up with Git and GitHub first. So everybody go to github.com. If you don't already have a GitHub account, please go and create one. I'll give a minute or two for folks to go and create the GitHub account. Okay. So at this point, I'm assuming that everybody has signed up and has a github.com account. Let me know if you're not able to make one. All right. We're going to create what's called a repository. Here's the third piece of terminology I'm throwing at you. Repositories are one of the fundamentals of using Git. You could think of repository as a special folder, a special project folder. So the way that people typically use repositories is they create one and then they put all their project files into it. So if we were creating our capstone, we would create a repository for our capstone and we put all of our capstone files into it. Same thing for a portfolio website or a blog or whatever you're making. Typically, you can just interchange the word repository with project and they will typically mean the same thing. Although repository means something very special in Git terminology. So all that to say, let's go and create a new repository, or rather, let's go and create a new project on GitHub that allows us to upload some files to deploy a website. So let's go to github.com. And then up here in the top right, there's a plus icon, create new, up here in the top right. Hit create new repository. You should see a page that looks similar to mine, except it won't have the Datadog stuff on it. Say create a new repository. Cool. All right. Ignore the repository template stuff. Come down to owner. That should already be selected. It should say your username and then a slash and have the box for repository name for you to fill out. Now you can put whatever you want here in this repository name. You could call this capstone. You could call this my blog. You could call this pretty much anything that you want, except for this one time in class. I'm going to require you to name it in a very, very specific way. And if you don't name it in a specific way, stuff is gonna break. So pay close attention here. So for the repository name, I want you to call it your GitHub username your GitHub username dot github.io. And if you have my slides open, I have the formatting for it on bullet point number 3. I also pasted the format into the Slack chat.
I already have one with that name.
Do you have anything special in it that you like?
I don't know. I gotta go look at it. I don't even know it.
Yeah, if you want to go and destroy it, you can. That would probably be the easiest, and then recreate it. Otherwise, you could just use it as is, whichever. Real quick, I could walk you through how to delete it if you'd like.
Yeah.
Sure. So here's the steps for going to delete it. Find your repository.
Yeah.
Are you at it?
I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Like it has a name, but oh, I see. I found it.
You found it? Okay. So
Yeah,
you're
there's
looking at a
nothing in
screen
it.
kind of like mine?
Yeah, it's empty.
Okay. So go up here to the top under settings.
Mm-hmm.
And then scroll all the way down on that page to the danger zone. Delete repository.
This repository.
Exactly.
Oh, I have to type it.
Cool. You should be all set.
Now, my question. Is when naming the repository, is it like case sensitive? For example, like I have like my username and one of the letters like lowercase, but my username has like an uppercase.
Yeah, match the case sensitivity.
Okay.
Repo names or repositories bear with me. I'm going to use the words interchangeably. So repo, repository mean the same thing. I might also accidentally say project. I apologize. But repo names do preserve case sensitivity. So whatever you name it, it's going to preserve it. It's not going to do anything funky and try to switch it to lowercase or uppercase or anything weird like that. But yeah, try to match that. Okay, and then for the description, you can put whatever you want. This is really just for you. If you want to give it a description, I'm going to say this is my portfolio website, and then set it to so this box here for public and private. You can set it to private. You can have as many private repositories as you want, meaning that only you can see the code that's in that repo. But for this repository, please set it to public so everybody can see the code that you're pushing. And then very, very, very important, the initialize this repository with, please check that add a README file. And you can ignore the other two boxes. So just to recap, you've named your repository name, username.github.io. You've set your visibility to public, and you've added a README file. It's kind of the three important steps here. And then click Create Repository. You should be staring at a screen something like this. If you don't see this, you can always go up to your profile over here in the top right, click on Your Repositories, and it will take you to a list of all the repositories that you have, and you can click on it from there and get to this screen. So you should be staring at something like this. Once you've done that, I've got a form for you to fill out. So please come to this page, paste it in the Slack chat, or the Zoom chat rather. Please come to this page and add your entry to this. So come in here, add your name, your GitHub username, and the link to that page. I didn't even do mine correctly, so let me fill that out. There we go. Also, I'm counting this as attendance, so please make sure to add yourself in here.
I'm just recreating a file. I didn't add the add me.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I'm just recreating a file. I didn't add the README.
You didn't add the README?
No. Moved too quickly.
Oh, no worries. Let me show you real quick what happens if you miss that. If you miss that box. If you go and create a new repository, nobody else do this. Just watch for a second. Without README. If we go and we skip the add a README file box, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. And it's going to give you some instructions on how to fix this problem. And they involve running some command line stuff, which you can totally do. At a certain point, you can totally do this fairly quickly, but just as easily, you can just delete the repo and recreate it and check that box, which is what I would recommend. So if you didn't hit that README, if you didn't check that README box, just go up to settings on your repo, scroll down to the danger zone, delete the repository, and just recreate it. Huzzah, does that work for you?
Yep. I'm going to the danger zone. I'm deleting this repository. I read and I understand. Get. I
Still muted.
what? I got a capitalize on?
His audio still unmuted.
Oh,
Nice. Okay. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next thing. If you have any questions though, or run into any problems, please chime in and we'll fix it. Fix it quick. Okay. So we've got repository. Now we need to now we need to add some files to it. What we're going to deploy this week is the portfolio, but if you have a personal portfolio, if you have your own code, please feel free to use that. I'd much rather you deploy I'd much rather you deploy your own website, your own code, than necessarily just deploying the code that I'm going to use. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to use the code that you guys have already written for week 4, day 2, that portfolio code. If you don't have any code that you've already written for a website, please feel free to use this. But if you have your own, please use that. And just to get a gauge from folks in the class, are there some people that have already started on their own portfolio, their own website?
We all did as a
I
project.
haven't done it yet.
Okay. So everybody's kind of working off of the example code from this week 4, day 2. Okay. Yeah, I know there's some other exercises that you've been doing lately just to practice with JavaScript, but the most recent full website that I could see was this one, the portfolio website that you worked on. So I'm just going to go with that. But again, if you've got your own code, please feel free to use that. Okay. And I need to get the latest of this code, so I'm going to do that real quick. You don't have, please don't do this on your machines. I'm just catching up because I know everybody already has this code on their machine and I need to grab it. So wherever your careers in code is at, navigate to it using Finder or whatever tool you use to get to that code. So here's my code on my machine. Oops, need to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah. So my week 4, day 2, I've got an image folder, an index, style.css, and a weather.html. I really just need to have an index.html and that's it, but I'll use all of this stuff. Is anybody not able to find some code? I don't really care what it is, just as long as you have an index. So in index.html. You can use code from the class. You can use the same stuff that I am, whatever you want to use. Is anybody not able to find some code on their Mac?
I'm able to.
I'm still trying to find something. I just need a minute.
Okay, yeah, no rush. Again, the
and we're
place that go ahead.
and we're uploading the index.html file, correct?
And I'll show you how to do that here in a minute. Right now, what I'm asking folks to do is to go on their computer somewhere and find in Finder, find some index.html and use that. Again, a good place to do that is wherever you have your careers in code on your computer. Go into the week 4, day 2 folder, and you'll have some valid code in there that you can upload. So feel free to use that if you don't have anything. Otherwise, if you got something, use it. I mean, we could write our own website real quick if y'all want. Cobble some HTML tags together.
We passed on that, you know.
Sound good to me.
I usually go and copy and paste it from a website, to be honest, when I need to get the boilerplate for HTML. There's a lot of stuff to know about getting that HTML right.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So I just made like my little description, like I just added a little bit of style into it. I made one word italicized using Markdown. But can a README do recognize any other language?
So README is Markdown.
Just
And
Markdown.
if you do a just Markdown, I mean, what
I
more could
like
you
Markdown.
want?
I got no beef with it, but no.
No, it's Markdown. I mean, I think I don't know what character encodings are accepted, but yeah, no, it's just Markdown. If you Google Markdown language, you could see the spec and the kind of form. Have you done much with Markdown in the past?
Yeah, I used it in my old job kind of. It was not a tech job, but we needed to use Markdown for the specific computer program we used to take notes on whatever we did. And it is real similar to HTML. It's just not really. There's some
Yeah.
similarities.
Yeah, it's strange. You don't have open close tags. You
Yeah.
just have the start of tags. But for everybody else, what we're talking about is one of the things that you got when you created that repository, if we go back and look at it. Oops. One of the things that you got when you check that box is Git created a README file for you. And one thing that GitHub will do is whatever is in that file, it will put on this landing page here, which means that you can give your project, your GitHub project, you can give it a nice description, and you can communicate to other software developers what exactly this project is doing, what this repository is doing. Contrast this with, let's go look at Facebook React really quick. Check out Facebook React's README. So they've got all sorts of stuff going on here. They explain what the project is about, how to install it, links to documentation. They have examples for how to use the code inside of the project. They have legal stuff about how to contribute to the project. I mean, everything is here. But that is all contained in the README. So if we go back to Facebook React and we look at their readme.md, the file, we open it up, you'll see that it just contains all of this text. Here's the raw version of what Markdown looks like. You don't need to know this. This is just a fun fact. Don't feel like you have to absorb all this info. But this is the Markdown language and how you write what you see here. Okay, sorry about that side tangent. We've gotten to we should all be at the point where we have some sort of Finder window ready with some code, hopefully some code on your computer. And then let's take our GitHub repository, and it's as easy as Finder window over on the left, GitHub over on the right, drag and drop. It'll pop up a thing saying commit changes. You don't even have to type anything at all. You can just say commit changes, wait for it to do its thing. The page will refresh, and boom, you've created your very first Git repository. To recap one more time, take the files, drag over, hit commit changes, wait for it to finish. This is kind of neat. GitHub has already detected that my code is 83% HTML and 16% CSS.
Can you do that one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. Code here on the left, drag to the right. And then once it's done uploading on this form, click commit changes. And that's it.
Oh, so you didn't have to like I was trying to do add file, so you can just drag it.
Just drag it. I've never used that before actually. If you click the upload files, it kind of gives you the same screen. I guess you could probably drag and drop. Yeah, it's like the same screen. It's just I showed you like a shortcut to the same screen. That works too. Yeah. I think these all achieve the same thing. One of the really cool things that I can do now that I have my code uploaded to my GitHub repository is I can say, hey, Max, I don't understand what this link rel pre-connect fonts gstatic.com cross origin tag does. So I can just click right here on this link. I can paste this to whomever, probably Max. Here's the link. And when you click on that link, it will take you to that exact point in this file, and the other person will understand exactly what code it is that you're talking about. Same thing, if you want to click anywhere in this file, you can select multiple lines with Shift, so you can click and then hit Shift and click again to select a block of code, and it will also be there in the URL, and you can share that with people. So once you upload your files, it makes it really easy to share that code and show others what it is that that you're talking about when you talk about the code that you've written. This is also a great way to do your capstone check-in. I don't know what Max is going to require for the capstone check-in down the road, but one thing that I've seen students do is obviously they show the progress that they've made on their capstone, but they will push it to GitHub and share the link to their GitHub for other students to be able to see their capstone code as it evolves. Okay, so that's uploading code to Git. Seemed pretty easy. Any questions?
Mine still says processing my files. Is that normal?
No. Is it just being really slow?
Yeah, my internet is a little iffy. And it says commit failed.
So you can recommit and upload those files. So just go back to your repository, forget that botched upload. Just go back to your repository, drag and drop and try it again.
Okay.
We talked about this so far. We talked a little bit about the public and private, but just so you know, down the road, if you want to switch your repository to private so other people don't see your code, you totally can. We looked at that danger zone in settings. I'll point that out one more time. If you go to settings on your repository down at the very bottom, there's the delete this repository. There's also a way for you to give your repository to someone else, but then you can change that visibility. So if you started off by accidentally making your repository private, you can set it to public, which I would strongly encourage you to do. But down the road, if you don't like having your project being public and you want to protect your code from prying eyes, you can go here and change visibility to private.
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
So my portfolio, I'm still working on, it's not done. So would I have to re-upload that when I'm done with it? And delete this one that's in there? How would that work?
Yeah, great question. You can, well, first off, let me encourage you to just upload your portfolio.
Oh, I did. I got it on there, but it's not done. Like I have to change
Yeah,
some.
totally fine. Remember, Git is not for the finished project. Git is for you to work on things as it evolves. So don't ever feel like I need to wait until my thing is done to upload it. And if you ever want to wipe it and start over from scratch, I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. You're like, I don't like any of these files. I want to replace them with something completely different. I'm going to show you how to do that. Because that is one of the drawbacks of what I've shown you here is that I've really only shown you how to add files by dragging and dropping them. But I'm also giving you a very, very easy way of getting your files onto Git. Like this is probably the simplest way that you can get your code up on GitHub. And we're still talking about Git within the lens of backups and deploys. We're kind of ignoring the social aspect. We're ignoring the fact that this is how one day when you're on the job, we're ignoring the fact that this is how you're going to communicate and work with your fellow employees. We're just focusing on Git as a backup tool right now. And just as a backup tool, this Git is fantastic for keeping your code in case in previous cohorts, folks have just had their Macs stop working, had their hard drives crash. I have had my son spill blue Gatorade on my Mac and completely toast it. I've had my Mac fall out when I was getting out of the car and toast it. These are back when their hard drives not as big of a deal now. But all that to say, if you back up your code, you're going to be a lot happier. Even if you don't back it up regularly, you're going to be a lot happier to start from an older version than nothing at all. So be sure to back up your code early and often. Okay, now let's get into the fun stuff. And we've got a little bit of time before we take our first break. Actually, let's not do what Max does. Let's have our break now, and then this will be a clean segue point into jumping into the next thing that I want to talk about. Okay. I will be around for questions, but I think we are going to meet back at 5:15. So see everybody in 25 minutes.
7:15.
I'm in Mountain Time. Y'all are not. See you at 7:15. Thank you. All right. So before the break, I showed everybody a very easy way of uploading files to Git. Take your files, open up a browser. with your repository open, drag and drop. That's as simple as Git gets. Now I'm going to show you how software engineers use Git, and there's a number of ways that you can do it. The one way that I showed a minute ago was you can use Git in the command line in the terminal. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I had a quick question about GitHub. Isn't there like a number of files you can upload at a time, or is it like unlimited?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a max file size, but in terms of the number of files that you can upload, I don't know what that threshold is. It's pretty dang high. There is a max file size, and I think for GitHub it's like 50 gigs. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really remember.
Yeah, because the reason why I asked because I try to upload a file like for this little thing I was working on, and I was just uploading like images inside like the GitHub, but I can only like upload up to like 100, I guess it
Yeah.
says. So
Yeah, you definitely run into problems when you try to use Git for what's called blob storage, where a blob can be anything from movie to an image to a exe to really big. When you think of GitHub, though, for the most part, you can get away with some small images and some pretty large images, but you can get away with some images, some sounds, some clips, and that sort of stuff. But for the most part, think of Git as storage primarily for your source code. But yeah, there are some thresholds, and especially when you go to work on a really big project like Facebook React, for example. Even though Facebook React doesn't have a lot of images and big files, it has a lot of history, and that also adds to the size of a repository, which we could talk about later. Good comment, though. Anybody else have questions before we dive back in?
Yeah. Can you put in the chat how you got your terminal to like connect to the next line like that?
Oh, so if
Added.
you go and open up terminal, you get this fun, well, sorry, no, you're probably looking at something like this. Is this what most people are, yeah. Is this what most people are seeing? Something that looks like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty plain. It's not very cool. You won't get any NCIS hacker street cred if your terminal is looking like this. So the two things that I will leave you with, this is extracurricular for sure. The two things that I will leave you with is the terminal that comes with Max is not great. It doesn't really have many features. So check out something called iTerm, iTerm 2. Check this out. It's a fun app. I would highly recommend it as a terminal replacement. And then uh, the other piece of fun that I can recommend is called Oh My Z Shell, Oh My ZSH. And this is how you can start getting into like theming and having your stuff look all fun. If you come to office hours, I will be happy to help you set up your terminal and get it looking really nice. Like for example, there's a bunch of themes that you can choose from. I mean, like a gobsmack of themes, and the exact theme. This is kind of a cool one. The exact theme that I use is called Pheno time. So that's what my terminal looks like. Anyways, you don't have to do any of that, but because you asked, I have to share. That's how I got this stuff. I'll paste a link to this one. Cool. Okay, so what I was talking about is I've shown you one way, drag, drop, super easy. But it leaves a bunch of unanswered questions like how do I delete files? And unlock, how do I unlock the how do I see what has changed? There's still a lot more that you could do with Git that we haven't explored. And there's a couple other methods that you could use to interact with Git. The drag and drop method is effective. However, you can use Git in the terminal. So if you type Git, there's a bunch of commands you can use like git pull, git push. You could do all the stuff that I'm about to show you in the terminal. And I would encourage you, if you have the time, to check it out and learn how to do that. But the other method is through a program called GitHub Desktop. It's and that's what we're going to practice using tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share this link. Go ahead and go to this website and grab GitHub Desktop, a copy of GitHub Desktop. Just pay attention when you go to this page. Don't click the shiny download for Mac OS button, as appealing as it is right here in the center. I don't know why they do that. Instead, grab the Apple Silicon Mac link down right below it. I think the one that you download here only works for Intel. But anyways, just grab the link down below it that says Apple Silicon Mac. Internet is really bad here today. Apologize for that.
Do we just sign in with our GitHub and Git desktop?
Yes, sign in with your GitHub account. I hope y'all have faster internet than mine. This is painful. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and grab GitHub Desktop, throw it into Applications, and then open up GitHub Desktop. You won't see a screen like mine. You should see something that looks a little bit more like, should see something that looks a little bit more like this.
Yeah. It said mine's got like your repository on like the left side.
URL. So you have like a sidebar over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Okay. I might not be logged all the way out. Have you already signed in?
Yes.
Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Okay, now this looks a little bit more like yours. Cool. Anybody else having problems getting in?
So from the main page where it says welcome to GitHub Desktop, do we just click on sign in to github.com?
Yes. Yep. And it'll kick you out to GitHub and you'll do stuff on GitHub and then it'll kick you back in.
Mine's just running from applications, y'all. Stop, Louis.
Oh, wait, what? What'd you say?
All right, finally, it finally popped. Mine's
okay.
about to run it through the application chat. Welcome to Github.
That happened to mine too. I ran it from the application folder, so it quit on its own and automatically reopened from the from the application folder. I think I wasn't running
Oh,
the app.
yeah, you open it from
That's pretty cool.
downloads and then it wanted you to move into applications. Yeah.
It's really smart.
Cornelius, I'm gonna pretend like you didn't say gaming Wi-Fi. I mean, Ethernet, come on. Everybody knows you gotta have that Ethernet.
All the game, that's what game.
When there's lag.
Yo, she turned off my game, bro.
Yo, you want muted, Hazard.
Yeah. Bro, she
Yeah,
walked right
mute
in
your
here and
mic.
turned
Mute
my
your,
shit
mute
into
your mic, bro.
Hazard, you're unmuted.
Give him a break. He's clearly having a crisis.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. So the first thing that you can do inside of GitHub Desktop is you can go and grab that repo that we just created. So over in filter your repositories, you could do it this way. You can start typing in your GitHub username and you should be able to find that username.github.io. You should be able to find that, click on it and hit clone. Otherwise, you can go and click clone a repository from the internet. You can do it that way. And you can also filter in here to find your GitHub repo that you created. Either way works. Just somehow find a way to clone that repository. And here, what clone means, this is another piece of Git terminology. Clone just means take whatever's on GitHub and copy it down to your machine. And we'll talk about what that looks like here in a second. But either way, find a way to clone that repository that you created. And you should, I know my screen has a bunch of them on here, but you should only see one. So click on that one and hit clone. And then your screen will change to something completely different. It should look something like the way you see on my screen. If anybody's having a problem getting here, please let me know, because what I'm about to say and walk you through here will not make any sense if you're not looking at the screen.
Wait, 1 second. Should I? I'm at the configure Git part. Should I keep it as the preset email or change it to my personal email?
Personal email.
Okay, I'll just have to be sure there.
Thanks for asking.
All right, yeah. Thank you. I'm all set.
So are we doing it the next part of the GitHubs, or do we click on our GitHub that we made, right?
Yes, click on your GitHub and clone it down. Click on your GitHub repo and clone it down.
I also have another question. I don't know if you're gonna go over it or not, but since we're on this screen, the no local change stuff, let's say you had like another repository, like isn't there a way for you to like just switch in between this and the other repository, or is it just only pertaining to this particular repository?
Yeah, good question. We'll jump into that here in a second. But you're talking specifically about this repo picker up here in the top left, the current repository. You can use that to switch. Right now, if you click on it, it should just show a sidebar and you only have the one repository because you've only cloned down one repo from GitHub. This is where you would do what you're describing. Yes. Great question. Okay. Anybody else having problems getting to this screen? Otherwise, like I said, it's not going to make any sense. So please feel free to chime in if you're not looking at the screen. Okay. So let's talk about what we're looking at right here. So this screen is going to help us keep track of the code on our computer and the code on GitHub.
Louis, back up, baby. Back up, Lou. Back up.
Azad, you keep coming off of mute. I keep hitting the mute button, but you keep coming off.
Oh, snap.
Okay, there we go. So this screen is going to track the differences between your machine and what you pushed up to GitHub. Now, right now, recall that when we did that drag and drop, basically took what was on our machine and we pushed it up to GitHub. So what's on our machine and GitHub is exactly the same, right? There's no difference between the code we uploaded and the code that's on GitHub. Well, we're about to change that. So let's go and open in VS Code. So we're going to click on the first button here, open in Visual Studio Code. Before I go any further, y'all have been using Visual Studio Code, right? Max hasn't found a new hotness and switched to that. Okay, cool. Just checking. All right, so we're going to go into VS Code and we're going to make some kind of change to our code. So I'm going to make a change in my index.html. This is called Max Matthews Portfolio because I'm just stealing his code. I'm going to call this Nathan Evans. And my title is going to be Nathan is better than Max in every way conceivable. Best teacher. And make some kind of change though in your code base. It doesn't really matter what you change. Change some part of your code in Visual Studio Code.
Does changing the title count?
Whatever you want to do. The sky's the limit. I'm not gonna restrain you to anything. If it's a joke about Max, I'm all for it. If it's a link invitation that you want to share to the secret Slack room, I'm all for that too. After you've made some sort of change, though, your GitHub desktop should have changed. It should have, all those buttons, helpful buttons, should have gone away, and now you should be looking at this Christmas tree lights sort of stuff. So this is where Git, in my opinion, starts to be really cool. Git is going to track all of the code changes that you make. And right now on my screen, it's highlighting exactly what changed from the time that I uploaded last to the changes that I made now. So Git will watch your files, and as you make changes, it will keep track of what has changed. And that is, in my opinion, really neat because we have a history of the changes made to our files. And if we ever need to, we can go back and I'll show how to do that here in a minute. But let's say that we've made some changes to our files. Let's go ahead and upload those files to GitHub so that we have them saved, we have them locked in, we have those changes backed up. So we've been editing our code in VS Code, we've been hacking, writing some JavaScript, HTML, CSS, whatever. We're going to take a break for a second, come over to GitHub Desktop. We'll see all of our changes here. Down here in the bottom left, there's what's called a commit message. So down here, it says update index.html. You can leave that blank, but I want everybody to get in the practice of writing good messages for their commits. And I'm going to introduce another piece of terminology here, what's called a commit. This here, what you see in this screen, that is considered a commit. Those changes, what has changed since the last time you uploaded your files and your changes to GitHub, that is an atomic unit called a commit. So we're going to give our commit a message, and then we're going to push it up to GitHub. So we're going to bundle all of this green and red that you see over here. We're going to bundle it up, and we're going to push it up to GitHub. So down here in the bottom left, let's write a commit message. And what I'm going to say is, for mine, you can give your commit any message that you want. This is for you to be able to describe the changes that you made. And the reason why we do this is in the future, if we need to come back and figure out, okay, why did we change it from Max Matthews to Nathan Evans? in the future, we can go back and look at these commit messages and find exactly where that change occurred a little bit faster if we give this a descriptive commit message. So, so let's write our first commit message. Down here in the bottom left, go down there and start typing out some sort of message. I'm going to give my commit message something simple like replacing Max Matthews with Nathan Evans. And that's going to be my commit message. I'm going to leave this big box alone so we don't write descriptions. And then I'm going to click commit to main. Again, that commit message is entirely for you. There's no rules as to what you need to put in that commit message other than make it somewhat helpful and describe to a certain extent the changes that you made. If you put in a good Max Matthews joke, say that in the commit message.
Can you show that how you did that one more time, please?
Absolutely. So over here, I'll be hacking on my code and I'll do something. Nathan, I don't know if this is better than Max Matthews. Okay, so I've got a change over here in GitHub desktop. I'm going to go over here to the bottom left and I'm going to create a commit. I'm going to bundle up these changes that I've made on my computer and I'm going to send it up to GitHub. So I'm going to start writing my commit message. Added my last name.
How did you can you show me the step of getting that changes in real time with there? So do I have to open Visual Studio? That's what I was trying to
Oh yeah. Definitely have VS Studio open. So if you have GitHub Desktop here, using GitHub Desktop, click on Open in VS Code. That will get you to your code. And this is actually a really great point. Make sure that you open up VS Code using GitHub Desktop. If you have GitHub Desktop open somewhere else, you can't use that VS Code window. It has to be opened up through GitHub Desktop. We'll talk a little bit about that more here in a minute. But go through GitHub Desktop, click Open in VS Code, go in here, make some changes to your code. If you're not seeing your changes show up over here in GitHub Desktop, make sure that you hit Save. And then when you switch back to GitHub Desktop, you should see the changes. Is that working for you now, Cornelius?
making one small change to see.
Cool.
Yep, I got it. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. If anybody else has any questions at this point, please feel free to chime in. So we've gone ahead and made those commits, but one thing that you'll notice, if we go and look at GitHub and we look at our project or our repository on GitHub, you'll notice that if I go to where I made these changes, recall that I took out Max Matthews. I said that I'm a somewhat better teacher. I made a bunch of changes to this file, but it's not showing up here on GitHub. And the thing that I'm missing right now is I haven't clicked the push origin button. So all those commits that we made, or if you just made that one commit that we made is only on our computer. So we really haven't backed up anything yet until we click on the push origin button. Once we click push origin, this thing will spin up here. And then when we go back up to GitHub and we look at our files, we'll see that our changes are there. So the process for using GitHub Desktop is go over here, make some code changes, make a commit message, fix spelling, commit them, and push them. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. So, so when you was doing like the summary, you don't have to like write like the description, or is that something where if you like building something and you want to let the person know like what does everything does, then do the description?
Yeah, good question. I've never written I've never written a description. I've never needed, or I've never personally found it valuable. Let's look at it for a second though, and let me show you what it looks like when you make a description. So I'm going to make another feature. I'm going to make another change. I added some R's. This is a really long essay about how I made this change, what it looks like. Here's how it makes me feel. This is my favorite. Okay, so I've added a description in addition to my commit, just regular commit message. And I'm going to commit that and I'm going to push it. The only difference to adding a description, if we go up here, is here's my commit on GitHub. So there it is. When we click on it, it adds this box. That's the only change. So other people, like you were pointing out, other people can go and on GitHub, they can see this long form description box. So if you have a bunch of stuff you want to talk about with that code change that you made, feel free. The thing that I found from my experience is that most people don't come and look at these. Most people look at this and that's it. And the reason why they look at the commit message, the reason why they only fill in this box is because most people just want the high level summary. If you have a bunch of things that you're changing all at once, that's when you would open a pull request. We'll talk about pull requests later. Great question. Other questions? Anybody not able to commit and push?
I was trying to do the commit and description, and I got an abort message. I was wondering, can you show me how you did your commit one more time, please?
You got an abort message. Okay. Let's make some more
I mean,
changes.
I could share my screen if you want.
Yeah, actually, I'm really curious what the abort message looks like.
Yeah, sorry. I was just trying to finish
No,
that.
you're okay.
Let's see. That's neat.
Oh, congratulations. You have a merge conflict.
Oh, fun.
Go ahead and X out of here.
Oop.
And then go to changes over on the tab to your left. Changes. There we go. Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, you totally have a merge conflict. So for folks that what's going on here on line 6 and line 8 and line 10, those funky markers, what it means is something has changed on GitHub and then something on your machine has changed, and the two can't be reconciled. So that's what these markers mean. The head section, Corn the Lore King, that's up on github.com. Sora is great is on your local computer. So you're trying to push this code up to GitHub, and GitHub is going, okay, I have no idea how to reconcile these two pieces of text. So you have to tell GitHub how to fix this. And so the easiest way is if you go and click back into GitHub into VS Code behind you, you see where it says accept current change.
Where would that be? I'm sorry.
I'm
blind.
It's okay. You're right here.
Oh, okay.
Yep, click that. Go. So you just accepted the change coming from GitHub. I don't know if that was what you wanted, but
yeah,
we. Okay, go ahead and hit save here. Go back to GitHub desktop.
Oh,
nice. Create a commit and push it. So just say one thing that you did is you resolved the merge conflict, which is not something I was expecting anybody to do today. It's pretty cool.
I like to do the impossible. And just commit.
Commit, yep, and push. Nice. Now everything that's on your machine is in sync with github.com. When it says no changes, inside of GitHub Desktop, that means that you are all synced up. Everything on your machine is backed up to github.com. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so like the way of like thinking about GitHub and GitHub Desktop with like the push and pull thing. So I don't know about anybody else, but the way I think of it is as pushing is like you pushing somebody inside of like the store, and pulling is like when you getting somebody from the store. I don't know, is that the right terminology, but
Yeah,
that's what.
no, that's exactly it. The thing that might not be clicking yet for some people, though, is like, why would I pull? Right? If all I'm ever doing is pushing, if all I'm ever doing is taking the changes, the code that I write on my machine and pushing it into GitHub, why would I ever need to pull? So at this point, polling doesn't make any sense, and we're not really going to talk about polling. Probably not this week. We can talk about it for office hours if anybody's interested. We'll definitely talk about it when I see everybody at the capstone um, uh, later on. But the reason why we don't pull changes is because we're not working on code with anybody else. If there's lots of people that are working on the same project as you, then other people could make changes and push them up to your repository, and then you would want to pull those down because you'd want to get the up-to-date same code that everybody is working on. But right now, everybody's working on their own capstone, everybody's working on their own portfolio. So all we're really going to do is treat Git like a backup tool, and we're just going to push. We shouldn't have gotten a merge conflict. Like, you only typically get a merge conflict when somebody else has made a change to a piece of code that you're working on. And then you have to figure out, okay, what were they trying to do and what am I trying to do? And how do we get those two things to align? That was pretty cool that we got a merge conflict, though. That's pretty neat. Great point about pushing and pulling. And just wanted to clarify why we're probably only going to deal with pulling this week.
How do you see a commit on GitHub? I keep going to it, but it just pulls up my github.io.
Yeah, good question. Do you mind if I share my screen and show you?
No, sir.
Actually, no, I'm lying. You share your screen and let me show you where your commit is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is the initial commit. This gets created for you automatically when you create your repo. Remember, we checked that box to add the README file? So GitHub actually made this for you. So go back to your repo. You can click up there at the top where it says hazadj.github.io. Yeah, that'll take you there too. Cool. And then inside of D2, click inside of D2. That's your code, right?
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. And then let's make a commit. So go back to GitHub Desktop behind you, that window with the Christmas lights.
Window with the.
Yeah, there you go. So you changed Hazad James' portfolio. You added the word new, right?
Yeah.
So you've made a change on your computer, but it's not up on GitHub yet. So we need to make a commit and we need to push it up. So to do that, go down to the bottom left where it says summary required, and let's make a commit. So just type in here some message like added the word new to title, or added new, whatever you want. Perfect. And then make sure that you have that D2 index.html. Make sure that box is checked up there. Great. Now you can commit to main. And then you've made the commit. Exactly. You got to push it next. Awesome. Now go back behind you to github.com, refresh. And two things happened. One, we're looking at the file. So if you scroll down, you'll see that the title changed inside the code. So scroll down to where that title tag is.
Yep.
Oh, it's right there. Sorry. You're absolutely right. There it is. Great. So it changed to new. And then up there at the top, you see the add to title. So that's your latest commit. See where it says add to title?
Yeah, sir. Yeah. When I did it before and I pushed repository, it just wasn't working.
So click on that real quick. Click on add to title. Nice. Yeah. And here's that same commit that you just had on your computer where you changed it from portfolio to new. Your commit is now pushed up to GitHub. And that is how you look at the commit that you just made. after you push it up to GitHub.
Yeah, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? All right. So this is a bit of a contrived example because we're making really small, trivial changes to our code. But it's important that we get in the habit of using Git to back up our changes. Let me share my slides real quick. Get through this. I'm back. Okay, here we go. Okay. Can everybody see the slides again? Cool. All right. We covered that. We covered that. Working on code. Yeah, we've made some kind of contrived edits. At this point, you might be asking yourself, this seems like a lot for just writing some code. Oh yeah, I apologize. I've got chat pulled up, but please just feel free to jump in and say something. Anwar, when you say configuring GitHub Desktop to run from the command line, GitHub Desktop, this is the app GitHub Desktop. This is not available in the command line. This is a GUI. This is a program that you can use. If you want to learn how to use Git in the terminal, that is a different thing. So you wouldn't try to configure this to work inside of the terminal. Instead, you would use it directly from the terminal. To open GitHub Desktop from the terminal, I think you can do. Let's see. I think you can do open users. Desktop. No. Open app. I think you could do that. Yep, you can. Okay. So in the terminal, the command is open /application/github /desktop.app. And I'll paste that in here. Alternatively, you could use Spotlight with command spacebar to open up your Spotlight and just type in GitHub desktop. Either one of those two would be pretty fast. So you might be asking yourself, why would I go to all the work of doing this when I could just write my code and save? Backup, making sure in case your Mac catches fire, you don't lose your stuff. That's number one selling point. But number two is you won't do it the way that I'm showing you right now. You won't make these really small changes and then push them up. Instead, you'll make some changes. Get rid of my thing here. So opening back up VS Code, you'll make a bunch of changes. Like you'll delete a huge div and you'll add some CSS tags. Maybe you'll change the position of one div so it's before the other. Maybe you'll write some JavaScript conditionals. Maybe you'll do all sorts of different stuff, right? You'll make a bunch of different changes to your code.
And down.
I thought that was my computer for a second.
I guess class is done.
See you.
Awesome. It's great so though. Oh, there he goes.
Just give him a bit, or someone message him on Slack
What just happened?
No,
He's
no,
back.
no,
He's back.
Oh, there we go.
You froze for about a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah,
Oh,
you
I'm
froze for a
sorry.
minute.
Just talking to myself. What was the last thing that I said? Don't worry about making lots of small changes. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, you were at delete a huge div or move something to
Okay.
somewhere else.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I was trying to show that you don't need to make commits for every tiny little edit that you make, for every tiny little change that you make. Instead, work on your code. Don't think about Git. Just work on your code for a bit. And then when you have a second, maybe when you go to grab a drink or use the bathroom or do something, or maybe when you're done coding for the night or whatever you're doing, just commit and push then. Don't feel like you have to make commits for each little change. Just think of it as a tool for backing up your work. And eventually, if you stick with it, this will become a muscle memory. And this is something that as software engineers, we have to get in the practice of doing. It's just part of the job.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When you're working on something and you're hitting save, is that just saving to the GitHub desktop app folder where it's, I guess, pulling and storing those files from, where it pulls it down from before you
Yeah,
commit anything?
really good question. So let's dive into that for a second because I've been a little bit vague about what's going on behind the scenes. When you make a change, you're making changes to your files on your computer. It's not until you commit them and bundle up those changes and push them, it's not until you do all that entire process that it ends up on github.com. So when you hit save, when you make changes in VS Code and you hit save, you've only made changes you've only made changes on your hard drive. Does that make sense? That only on your machine. And you can see where those files are. If you go with GitHub Desktop open, if you go up to the top and open up the repository tab and hit show in Finder, you can open up a Finder window with the code that that you're changing on your machine. So you can see exactly where these files are. One thing I do want to point out though, remember when I said make sure you open VS Code using that button? And when I say open VS Code with that button, I mean using GitHub Desktop, going up to either clicking open in VS Code if you have no changes. So like if we go back to that one screen, let me make my commit and push it up, refactor my portfolio. So I'm going to make a commit, push this. So I get back to this screen, right? I can click open in VS Code. I can hit show in Finder. But it's really important when you want to work on your project to do it using VS Code by opening it through GitHub Desktop. And the reason why is, I'm going to click show in Finder to illustrate this. The reason why is when you clone down your repository, you get a special folder. It's not like a normal folder on your computer. And what I mean it's special, let me show you. So here's my deluxe.github.io. If I look at where this is on my computer, notice down here what the path looks like. I'm sitting on my hard drive and users, Nathan Evans. I'm inside of my documents GitHub folder. So there's a special GitHub folder on my machine that GitHub Desktop maintains. And inside of that folder is a bunch of special folders that mirror the repository on github.com. So remember how we started off by dragging and dropping files from somewhere on our machine from that CIC 6D D2, week 4 D2 folder. Remember how we started off in that folder? Well, now we're in a completely different one, right? We got this brand new folder when we cloned down our repository from GitHub. So keep that in mind, because sometimes you might be making changes to code in VS Code and going, well, why am I not seeing any changes here in GitHub Desktop? And if you are ever running into that, be sure to go into GitHub Desktop and click Open in VS Code to make sure that you have the right VS Code window open. that was a lot. Is any questions? Any questions about about that clarification about the files and the folders on your computer? There's a lot going on there, and you can avoid most of the complexities if you just use GitHub Desktop as the entry point to working on your code. If you start using GitHub Desktop to open up VS Code and start working on your code.
So how would you create a folder?
Good question. Let's do that together. And also, here's a pretty good example of GitHub Desktop. Just not figuring out how to push this commit. If you ever see GitHub Desktop just hang, just close it out and reopen it. You're not losing any data. You're not breaking any files. If you ever run into any weirdness, try just closing out GitHub Desktop and reopening it. I'm going to just repush. I hope my internet's not flaking out on me. That's why this is hanging. Let's go ahead and create a file though, really quick. To create a file, we can do it one of several ways, but let's just do it through VS Code. So, or sorry, you said create a folder, right? Okay, so creating a folder, we can do it one of several ways. VS Code, click the folder icon, my stuff. Oops, I just want to rename it my stuff. And I want to create a file in it called my stuff.js. Okay. If I go back over here, notice how GitHub Desktop has already noticed that I've created a new folder and a new file. At this point, I can just say I'm creating a new folder, file, commit, and push. Assuming I can get this to show your file path within the view dropdown. Deandra, what are you?
Oh, because when you reference the file path, I noticed that it's not like default. So I was wondering the file path on your Finder.
Oh yeah, this?
Yeah. So like I had to go in my settings and turn it on just from view, and I was like, maybe other people noticed that too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't realize that this was a special thing that I had turned on to mine. I have no idea why. Is anybody else having problems pushing to GitHub right now?
No.
Okay, good. It's just me then. Okay, that is it for tonight. We will start off tomorrow with a little bit more Git practice, and then we're going to talk about some of the other features of Git, specifically diving a bit more into the versioning aspect of Git. Because Git keeps track of all of our changes, there's a lot of really cool stuff we can do, and I want to highlight that. Does anybody have any questions before we end for the night?
Yeah, real quick.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh, just real quick. I know it's probably like not the best practice because it's kind of redundant, but um, thus far I've had all of my files in an iCloud folder for Cruising Code, so I
Yeah.
can work on either my laptop or my Mac. I know I can pull everything down from GitHub, but if I had everything on and was just working between the two of them, is that okay to have the GitHub desktop folder in iCloud, or does that mess with things?
One of the things that you're going to hit when you get into the React part of the course is React has a bunch of libraries in it. And those libraries have a bunch of libraries in them. And it ends up being this really big folder. And it's not file size, it's sheer number of files that end up getting created. In previous cohorts, lots of students have done the same thing that you're describing, but they run into problems because iCloud takes a lot of time to create new files, not necessarily to download big files. I would not double up. I would use GitHub Desktop exclusively as your backing up source, just from from experience with other students. Feel free, you do you. The annoying part about iCloud is that it's not fully transparent at what stage iCloud is replicating. So you might switch to another computer and you won't know if all the files are there, and you'll run into weird bugs.
I've ran
Essentially,
into it when using Obsidian with somebody where it was like kind of um like live co-working in a file that it
uh-huh.
wasn't like natively supported in the application, but you're trying to do it through iCloud by a shared folder and it wasn't matching everything immediately. But all right,
Uh-huh.
was just curious.
Yeah, no, in practice, it's a good idea. And for most other stuff, non-coding related things, yeah, awesome. For coding though, Git is by far an easier way to do that. Great question. Anybody else have questions before we break?
Nope, none at all for me.
Um, yeah, I do, but I think Emerald had a question. He said, I don't believe there was an attendance code mentioned. What was it again?
It was putting your GitHub portfolio on the GitHub portfolio sheet. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, here is the sheet. Yeah, I think Max was doing something, but I'm just gonna look at the form, and if you put your name on there, then should be good. Thank you for checking out the Zoom chat for me.
No problem.
I do got a question before we get up out of here. Really quickly, if I want to upload some existing code, I say like my particular capstone project, what would be the best way to do it to upload it into GitHub desktop?
Yeah, good question. Create another repository. Leave the one that we've made. We're going to use that this week as your portfolio. So think of that as like your personal brand website. Um, if you want to start uploading your capstone, I totally encourage you to do that this week and experiment with having an extra repository. So far, you have one. So feel free to go and create another one. And remember, for that other repository, you don't have any restrictions for what you want to call it. So it doesn't have to be like your GitHub username.github.io. Call it whatever you want. Call it capstone, call it whatever you're. So yeah, go ahead and create another repository and uh, then clone it down using GitHub Desktop. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. Should I drag and drop the code from the Finder into the desktop on the desktop?
You can, yeah, you can do it that way. Alternatively, one thing you could do is you could create the repo using github.com like we did today. And then you can drag and drop straight into github.com or create the repository using github.com, go back to GitHub Desktop on your Mac, clone it, which it will be empty to start with, and then move the files into it. And I can show you how to do that tomorrow if you'd like some help with that.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else got questions before we break?
Oh, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna after you push a file, does it get deleted off of that local storage once it's been committed and pushed, or does it stay
Yeah.
on your local storage?
Good question. So think of it as mirrors of each other. You've got the repo that sits on GitHub, right? And then you've got the code on your machine. And you're trying to keep both of them in sync. So whenever you make changes, the one on your machine will be, think of it like a timeline. The one on your machine will be ahead in time because it has more stuff. And the repo on GitHub will be behind because it doesn't have the changes. So there's this balance where you're pushing from your local machine up to GitHub. And at any point in time, the two of them can be equal to each other or slightly different, if that makes sense. You're never deleting things, so to speak, from one or the other. They're both relatively similar in terms of what files they contain and the changes that they both have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Git is one of those things where the more you use it, the more it'll make sense. And also it's kind of as simple as a backup tool if you think about it that way. There's a lot of
I just didn't know if
terminology
it was
like
like fetching.
yeah, there's a lot of terminology like fetching, pushing, pulling, cloning, forking, syncing. There's a lot of fancy terminology that gets thrown around, and I'm guilty of it. But at the end of the day, you've got files on your machine, you've got files on GitHub, and you're just syncing the two of them. Anybody else have questions?
Yeah. So I got two. One, how do GitHub knows like the percentage of what language is being used? Like for example, I see HTML 87%, CSS 11%, and JavaScript like 0.3%. How does it know like the percentage of the languages that you upload to GitHub? Yeah.
I don't know exactly because I haven't looked at the code. My guess is it looks at the extension .html. It matches that up with the language. Same with CSS. And I think it calculates the ratio just based off of sheer number of lines.
Okay. And two, I noticed there's a when I'm at my username .github.io, I noticed there's a deployment segment here. Does
Yes,
that keep track of like each time you like upload it, or is that like a whole nother thing?
that's a whole nother thing, and we'll get into that this
Okay,
week.
okay.
Nice catch, though. Anybody else have questions? Don't steal my thunder. All right, cool. I will see everybody tomorrow, and have a great rest of your evening.
You as well. Good night, everybody.
Take care. See y'all.